How can industries that traditionally rely on human creativity and service excellence leverage the power of data? Well, in this keynote, I'm delighted to say that I'll be joined by Anca Marola, who is the Chief Data Officer at the Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy Group, a luxury goods company I'm sure many of you will be familiar with. And Anca is going to share her thought leadership on continuous data transformation, enhancing the consumer experience and brand's desirability in the age of artificial intelligence. Anca, it's a pleasure to have you with us. How are you?
Hi, everyone. It's great. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Fantastic. And it's a pleasure for us to know you'll be setting the scene with our opening keynote on day 2 of the summit. I gave a very brief synopsis there of yourself. Why don't you introduce yourself properly to our audience? Tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up working at the Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy Group.
Okay, well, that's a long story, but I've been working in data for about 15 years, data-related topics. Started my career in consumer research, and then decided to follow my passion for luxury, which brought me to the LVMH Group, where I've been working on data transformation topics since 9 years already. And, I'm going to present it afterwards, but since we have so many brands, because we have 75 independent companies, that's sometimes making me feel like I've been not going through only one data transformation journey, but more than 25 data transformation journeys at the same time.
Wow.
So, my goal today is just to share with you some thoughts from all this work that we've been doing.
Yeah. Wow, that's quite a lot of data transformation to get through in one brief. But look, loads of experience, lots of insights. I know you've got some slides with you as part of your keynote presentation. There they are. They've appeared. So look, I'll hand over the reins to you, Anca, and then I'll see you back here for a little bit of Q&A very shortly. How does that sound?
Perfect. Thank you.
Fantastic. Over to you.
Okay, so hi, everyone. Just before I dive into the meat of the topic, why this keynote is relevant to all of you. First of all, LVMH is not just working in fashion, as some of you might think, with Louis Vuitton being a well-known brand, but actually our activity spans across more than 6 divisions. So we also have brands like Moet Chandon, Dior in beauty, Tag Heuer in watches and jewelry. We have Sephora, we have hotels and media. So all of these, what do they have in common? They're all creative industries that rely on that human creativity and touch. So working with all of these 75 maisons, what I noticed is that they all have the same common challenges. So my goal today is to share with you some of those learnings. First of all, we have seen more and more AI transforming the future of our retail industries and creative industries. Of course, companies like Netflix, it's normal that because they're purely based as a model on artificial intelligence, but 80% of their views are coming from the product recommendation engine. So it's touching all of our lives every day when we watch Netflix. But even at LVMH, which is a company that's traditionally existing for hundreds of years, and so we have offline shops, we don't only have a digital presence. Even for us, 75% of our online clients are today interacting with AI services. So it's already quite expanding in terms of impact. And aside from this, from a business perspective, McKinsey has been working with a lot of clients to identify the business impact. And we do see that it drives up to 12% of sales incremental, thanks to applying AI across the value chain. So all of this has become more and more important, and in the recent years, accelerating quite a lot for all of us. For us, I think in LVMH, but we can extrapolate this to all creative industries. There's 2 core missions that we want to achieve with data. First of all, we talk a lot about consumer experience. How can we build the future of consumer experience? I really strongly believe that now this will be shaped mostly entirely by how we are able to employ data and artificial intelligence to hyper-personalize and target the experience. And then secondly, it's about the people, our employees. how can we augment their intelligence with artificial intelligence? That's why I like to say augmented intelligence rather than artificial intelligence. How can we assist their creativity with the right tools, allowing them to optimize the operations, the product development, and the creative process? So those are our two core missions that I feel might resonate with a lot of you. For the first one, in the customer experience space, we are facing today more and more with an attention crisis. As consumers ourselves, we feel it every day. There are stats that are quite mind-blowing. There are 300 billion emails that are being sent per day, whereas we are maybe 5 billion people with internet. So it's quite, we're quite bombarded every day with a lot of advertising and communications. And there's some stats saying that we even see 10,000 ads per day per person. So you can imagine that today the consumers have developed this sort of blindness. And so it's so crucial. It's not just preferable now, it's absolutely crucial that we replace that quantity by the quality factor. And that quality can come mostly from data and AI by talking less, but talking at the better time with the right content to the consumer. Second, we do have a more fragmented consumer experience. From our own studies at LVMH, we have beauty clients that are engaging with up to 30 different touch points in their purchase journey. So that's quite a lot. It's very hard for us as brands to be consistent and maintain the sort of coherent experience across all those touch points. So to me, the mission of data here is really to bridge, reunite that understanding of the customer and orchestrate cross-channel for a consistent experience. But what's specific to it, right? What's specific to creative industries? Because what I said so far was something that can apply to anyone. I think that, AI is very good at looking at the past, learning from the past patterns and replicating the same patterns in the future. But what has been very hard for us internally here was we have this notion of creative industries being tastemakers. So we don't want to always keep the consumer stuck in the same trends. We want to bring them to sophisticate the taste and create the trends of the future. So it's not just about replicating the past behavior, it's about creating and stimulating new behaviors. So how can we do that? I think we have to really take a step back, and sophisticate our approach when it comes to consumer experience, personalization, and targeting. First of all, some techniques that we're employing at LVMH that might resonate with you are this notion of man-machine curation. So how can the merchandisers, the people that we consider have the taste in the company, work with the machine continuously to teach the taste to the machine, give the taste for the future as well. So it's this notion of feedback to the algorithm that is an active learning process. So it's not just in the beginning, but it's also a continuous feedback loop that evolves with the taste of our merchandisers. Then second part is, I would say, not just doing the sort of, I don't want to call them, I'm calling them dumb recommendations when you're just, for example, putting a bunch of SKUs in an email and we're trying to just predict which ones are the best. I think it's also important for people who have this notion of being tastemakers to evolve the approach and take a higher view to that recommendation strategy and have that bigger picture recommendations. That this translates, for example, into full look recommendations. So in LVMH, for example, we don't want to just have a bunch of SKUs. We want to have that full look that is a consistent and tasteful match as a whole, So each SKU have to go together very well. You don't want to mix yellow socks with crocodile or with, panther print. So that's just an example. Aside from that, it's also about the journey. When we are starting, it's easy to do this sort of targeting personalization scenarios. But as we get more sophisticated, we have more and more scenarios. So how can we take that helicopter view to start prioritizing the full journey of a customer? Because we have so many triggers, we want to employ so many recommendation strategies that sometimes it becomes too much, and we need to take a step back and start to orchestrate it and prioritize with rules. And then the third part is around the notion of surprise. You know, we get this feedback from our customers in our consumer studies that tell us, well, everything is so automated nowadays that it doesn't leave me space to be spontaneous, you know? So because I get a proactive contact at the right time, it doesn't leave me that space to just drop in the store, for example, unannounced, just because I'm walking by. So I think it's important for us to also leave that space in our strategies for this notion of serendipity. And then also from an AI perspective, it's also about how do you incentivize the AI to not just optimize for the short-term result, but also optimize for that longer-term engagement of a customer. So, and therefore have this notion of more focus towards surprise engagement and not just sales, because long-term, that's what's building our brand relationships and consumer delight. Then in the operations part, I think it's really key for us as creative industries to leverage this human talent that we have that's allowing us to differentiate, right? So it's about augmenting these people, giving them the right tools, empower them with AI at their fingertips so they can make the final decisions in a way that's more informed. So inspiring them, automating parts of it, but not completely replacing what is truly differentiating today. And by the way, you know, I mean, it's my belief that since now everything is becoming very automated and digitalized, there will be a trend in the future where we'll see the opposite, because everyone's doing something right now. The people who will differentiate in their consumer experience and impact is those who do the opposite. So more human touch will become differentiating versus those who automate a lot. So how can we manage this from an AI strategy? I think it's also a notion of partial automation. So not doing full end-to-end automation. There's nothing worse, I think, and maybe everyone can resonate with this experience. But you know, when you call the customer service center and it's just impossible to talk to a person and you just can't solve your problem, there's nothing more frustrating than that, right? So also this notion of AI that today is not really fully understood by us. I think we're just at the beginning, even though there's so much progress that has been made in the past years, we're just scratching the surface of the potential that AI has. So I don't think we fully understand immediately its full impact. And that's why my personal opinion is that we have to keep some sort of oversight and control over it, not just let it be completely independent in the way it acts. Also, you know, there's this notion more and more of bias, right? So we've seen what happened with Facebook, that's now creating more and more human control over the outputs as well. So I think that's kind of an important thing for the future, to be much more responsible and in control of the AI that we're building. And of course, it's also about explainability. So because we want to empower these people with AI, they need to better understand why the AI is recommending what's recommending. You know, we see it on the field every single day when we want to scale our initiatives. We need to win the trust of those creative people. So the notion of explainability is quite key. So to sum up, to me, there's 4 keys to success when you want to operate in data, but also in creative industry specifically. I think it starts with the people being our customers, but also our employees, our creative people. So we need to first think about their needs. What do they need to be more successful in their jobs, but also in their experience with us? It starts from the company's strategy. So at LVMH, we've always taken a sort of a backward approach. I've seen many companies start a lot with the technical part, the data collection part, But we've taken a bit of a different approach where we're very focused from the beginning on the business use cases. And then we're retro working back all the technology and data. So then secondly, that's about looking inward at your priorities, at your use cases. But more and more, we need to look outward as well towards the society, because what we do now has an impact that is broader, that we might not understand immediately on the society. So we have to keep that in mind and start controlling it. And of course, the enablers on the side is what everyone is working on. It's our data platform to be able to scale our initiatives. It's the AI that we're building that has to be, containing all of the elements that I just spoke about. And then a lot also on the data governance side. How can we, data governance in respect with everything that's happening on the privacy policy side, that's more and more challenging. I think there's a lot to reinvent on the data collection front. And also as a company, how can we govern our data better and treat it like a real asset? So that's kind of what I wanted to share with you today.
Fantastic, Anca. That was a really wonderful opening keynote and presentation. So thank you for delivering that. I'm sure much or all of what you said there will resonate with many of our audience members here today. Speaking of which, we have time now for a Q&A. So if any of our audience members sat listening to what Anca had to say and got any burning questions or even comments, you know what to do. You did it yesterday perfectly well. Take to the Zoom chat and we can bring you up here. But Anca, a couple questions from me that just off the top of my head, really. And I'll just start with one of the final slides you finished with, just talking about what AI can do in terms of augmenting your capabilities and employees' capabilities. From your perspective, working in a creative industry, there must have been, or there must be resistance to the implementation of AI on some level or some degree. How do you tackle that? Is the onus on you to sort of communicate around how this can enhance your employees, your colleagues? What sort of barriers have you faced and how have you overcome those?
I think, honestly, the biggest barrier is this fear, because people are very skeptical because they think we want to replace what they're doing. So that's why I'm putting such a big emphasis on that. It's not about that. It's about enhancing what you're currently doing. I think an artist told me something interesting yesterday, who is understanding the AI part much better. He said, actually, looking at the archives or using data, that's kind of the same thing to me. It's just that everyone's making a big deal out of it. So I think that's an interesting way to put it. So at LVMH, what we're doing more and more is we've set up a data academy from this year to educate much more. So we're being much more vocal. We're trying to say it from the beginning. It's not this. Okay, so everyone relaxes, and then we're like, this is what it can be. So now you can project yourself, and also just train them, inspire them, and help them project themselves much more in using this sort of information.
Fantastic. Well, we've already got some questions coming in, so why don't we just divert to one of those now? We've got one from Danielle, or Daniel, I believe, sorry, I should say. If we want to go ahead, bring up Daniel. Hi, Daniel, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Very well, thank you indeed. Question for Anca?
Sure. I wanted to know if the transformation, the AI transformation they're doing is mostly on the online platform, or is it also like to change the behavior in the stores and like in real life, let's say?
Yeah, it's everywhere. So actually the online part is bigger now, much bigger than it used to be before with COVID. But the offline experiences are much bigger in our business. So we actually implement AI also in the stores to help the sales advisors to prepare their store visits, to help them engage with their clients, find the right clients at the right time, to invite to events. We also employ it in the customer service center. For example, customer service center, you don't always see the client, so it's very hard to recommend things, whereas we have a lot of people calling us for recommendations over the phone. And so we have recommendations also in the customer service center. We use it in supply chain as well. So it's not just on the website. Although it's true in terms of change management, I find that the digital part is a bit easier. So it takes much, it's much faster to implement. We've scaled that faster than in retail. Retail, since it's operated by people every single day, it takes so much time to train and then to do that change management. So from a rollout perspective, it's still in progress.
That right, Daniel? Answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for coming up and asking a question. We have another from our audience members, so we'll go ahead and bring up Tam, I think is our audience member, with another question for you, Anca. Hello, sir. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity here. Thank you for sharing everything, Anca. Everything you said so far has resonated very well with me, and more importantly, the ethical AI side of it, because me coming from PNC Insurance, we are a very regulated industry, and anything and everything that we sell has this ethical underpinning. But my question today is more around, when you talk about creating new behaviors, I would assume that a great amount of testing and learning kind of goes into it. So what are some of the strategies that you have applied in there to allow you to keep these cycles of testing and learning opportunities, so that you keep them in check and stay on the right side of the ROI? Because obviously we all operate under a tight set of resources and be able to show some positive ROI to our leadership back at the end of the day. So how do you balance these two?
Listen, for me, it's easier because I have so many brands in the company that I always have a big testing ground. We always have, and therefore we can always distribute a bit the test and learn across brands. So that's one answer. I think second is we know exactly what's working very well. So we always try to have in the roadmap one big thing that we know for sure it's going to work, because we've seen it work in one of our other companies, and then test some new stuff in the roadmap of each company that we're less sure of. So I guess it's about putting a big one that's a sure win, and then mixing some other things that we're not so sure of. So that's kind of a sort of rules that we have. Is more like the 80-20. We're trying to have 80% of the stuff that is the core things that will drive a lot of incremental, and we know it. And then 20% that's still that innovative part, we were not so sure, and so on. Most recently, actually, we're also setting up an R&D center around AI. That's, I guess it's not just R&D on the AI technique itself, it's also on being able to work on use cases that are a bit more long-term and uncertain, so that we pull it out from the core team that's focused on the core business. How do we optimize it and make it better? So those two, that's the trend in our company.
Thank you. That's very insightful.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you to you, Tam, for coming up and asking a question. Good to see you up here. And we've got another question from our audience. It's really proved popular, your opening keynote, Anca, which is great to see. So let's go ahead and bring up another of our audience members. Hello to you. Hi.
Hello, I was just able to unmute myself. Hi, Anca. Thanks for the presentation. It was very insightful. The question that I have is, you mentioned basically you are using AI in different areas, and you also mentioned explainability. So I guess based on what you see from your AI systems models, will you be able to give us an example or some interesting insight or trend that you basically saw in your AI models, and what did you do about it? I guess an example will be great.
I guess I would say it differently. So I'll answer more on the explainability side. I think we had this case where we started by trying to equip the stores with more AI. And the stores people are very skeptical, right? Because they're the ones pushing the actions afterwards. So they're not going to push or do anything if they don't know exactly, if they don't trust the system. So we therefore had to start not only just building the algorithm and saying, well, it's machine learning, you know, so the machine just tells you to do that, so trust it. We had to actually build entire decks that says, well, why these customers right now? What's predictive? What is important, therefore, as features that seemed to have a big impact on predicting this next frequency of the purchase or the next value and so on. So we had to actually build out that the weight of each type of feature that were the most impactful for the algorithms, and then built a sort of storytelling that was giving examples of real clients to say, look, an example is this client, you know, it's someone that you wouldn't think about it like that by yourself because they've done a lot of different things. But you see now these common things that the algorithm is influenced by. Well, here's what they look like in real life. So this, in a way, gave them a lot more confidence and is now mandatory for every single project that we're doing. We're not rolling out the test until we actually explain to everyone this sort of, and this sort of document the approach.
Very interesting, thank you. So, if I may, so in a way, you are using to segment the customers to some extent. Would that be accurate if I phrase it like segmentation?
Yeah. Well, so for example, if we predict the next purchase, so we say this client will probably be interested to talk to you again in the next 2 weeks, and give those information to the sales teams. Well, we would need to explain why. Why does the algorithm think this, you know? So that's kind of the approach that allows the people to trust it and then use it much more.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you to you, sir, for coming up as well and asking a question of Anca. Well, Anca, that pretty much concludes all the time that we have together. There are so many questions there to get to from our audience members. But like I said, what you said has really struck a chord, really resonated. So look, big thank you for opening day 2 of our summit. I hope you've enjoyed it. We have.
Thank you. It was great. Great questions. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. We'll see you later on. Bye-bye.
Bye.